for a step that happens between a grant being submitted and then a grant being awarded. So I'm going to come at this from the context of the NIH because that is sort of the framework that I typically work in. But many other organizations use the just-in-time terminology, even though they may have different requirements. But we're going to use the NIH as sort of like the general framework. So the NIH says, hey, your grant has been scored 30 or under. And when that happens, the PI will typically get an email that says, it's an automated email from the system that says you have been requested to submit just-in-time materials. Now, this automated email is not the one you want to respond to when it comes to just-in-time. So the automated email is just something the system sends automatically when a project gets a score of 30 or under. For grants that are actually going to be considered viable under the pay line, you're going to get another email from the grants management specialist. And the grants management specialist will say, hey, thanks so much for sending your grant submission. We need this, and this information from you in order for us to be able to fund this award. And so what I'm going to show you now, what we're looking at now is the components of a just-in-time. So typically, when you get that email, they're going to ask you for some additional information. They're going to say, hey, listen, we need your other support. We need IRB materials. If there's human subjects, we need verification of IACUC approval. Typically, we are now at the stage where they need the actual approval documents before they will fund the project. Let's say, for example, you're going to have animal studies. Before you're going to be able to begin work on the project, you're going to need to have your IACUC approved. Now, there are cases, though, where say, for example, there's human studies, but the human studies don't start until year 3 of the project. And so you don't really need your IRB to be approved at that time for human subjects. So you may be able to submit now with just your IACUC or without the approvals that are necessary because they're not needed until later on. However, if the human subjects or animals or any of that's going to be part of the research from the beginning, you're going to need to include those. Then you have some additional information related to human embryonic stem cells if necessary, and then genomic data sharing. So if there are other things that they need, for example, human subject certification to demonstrate that the people who are working on this project have gone through the human subjects training, in some cases, they may be looking for other types of information, an updated data sharing and management plan, for example. So in that email, you will get the list of things that they want. The responsibility of the research administrator is to collectively kind of put these things together. So if you wanted to, you can at this point go into the ERA Commons website and click on status. And then when you click on status, I'm going to show all these things here. Status, you can get there that way as well. And then, okay. So then once you see the list of the grants that are available to you to look at, when you click on these 3 dots and you see JIT, you'll click on the JIT, and that's going to take you into the just-in-time space where you're now going to go in and update everything. Now, depending on your organization, there may be different requirements for what it is that your managers want you to do. So it's always really important to talk to your supervisor or your manager to find out, what do you maintain? What does your PI maintain? And how does this get done? Typically, the way this would happen would be that your investigator is responsible for maintaining their other support. They are the ones who are responsible for maintaining their human subject certification. Like, this is all part of their research and these are their requirements. However, depending on your organization, you may have a centralized database where this information is stored so that you can very easily go and see and pull down the information that you need, someone's human subject certification, getting the IRB paperwork, and so on. And that may be part of the research administrator's job in your organization. Or it may be that your investigator is responsible for collecting all of this together and giving it to you, and then you review it for accuracy, get back to the PI to say, hey, you need to make these changes. And then you go back and forth until it's set. Now, regardless of how your organization does it with the investigators, if there is a sub-award on this project, then you're going to need to reach out to the research administrator on the sub-award to let them know that you've had a just-in-time request and that you need these documents from your investigator. So from their investigator. And if you take a look at the Patreon article that has this in there, there's some template emails that you can just copy paste and send to a sub and say, hey, listen, we got this just in time request. These are the things we're going to need. And then you can just pull out the information that you don't want. Like, for example, if you're sending an email to a sub that's all animal studies, you're not going to ask them to send you their human subject certification. So you need to adapt it just according to what your specific project is. But it's helpful to have a template email that you can just copy paste. Typically, it's important to keep in mind that just-in-times tend to be a little bit weirder in that the may get an email and they may say, we need this right away. You may get an email and they'll say, oh, hey, you have a couple of weeks to get this to us, or there'll be no deadline on it at all. It'll just say, hello, you need to get this information to us. Typically, you want to do them as soon as you possibly can because funding is waiting on this. But you want to make sure that you are checking with your manager. And if you'll notice here on the left-hand side of this particular document that I have, there are a list of questions there that you can ask your manager to say, okay, what are our responsibilities and where do I find this information? You may not need this right now. So if you're not doing it just in time, there's no real reason for you to ask about it at this moment. But if you are at this point, your supervisor has said, hey, you're brand new, go learn some stuff and then come ask me some questions. This is a good list of questions for you to take to them, and it will start the conversation about how just-in-times are done at your organization. The only thing to consider in terms of timing is, again, what are your organization's rules and requirements related to internal deadlines? So, for example, whereas a grant being submitted may have a hard line 7 to 10 business day deadline in which your investigators need to get this paperwork to you so that you can submit it and have it go through the appropriate channels for approval. For a just-in-time, you don't necessarily always have all of that time. So the just-in-time will typically start a series of activities that will then proceed very quickly to get the process through and then get the grant funded. Now, different organizations will have different requirements. So you may have some organizations like the JDRF who asks for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, who will say, okay, we want these pieces of information, and it's their own just-in-time process, but it's not necessarily the same as what is the NIH requires. So the idea of a just-in-time exists in many different sponsoring agencies, and they may call it something different, but usually people are familiar with the term just-in-time. However, it is also important to note that there are organizations that will fund you without any just-in-time. So basically, you, an American Heart Association, you submit a fellowship grant and the fellowship is awarded. You get a letter in the mail saying, congratulations, you've been awarded. The money is coming, the end. And that's really all that happens. So there's no just-in-time that happens. So a just-in-time doesn't always happen for every funding agency. You're typically going to see a just-in-time activity with the Fed and for sure with NIH, DOD, things like that. And they're going to ask for additional pieces of information. You may have more than one just-in-time process where basically you send in the just-in-time and then they come back and say, we want more paperwork from you, now submit it again. You may also have an internal system that tracks it. So for example, you may upload everything into ERA Commons, but at the same time, you may also have to do it through your own internal grants management system. So you'll have like a record here. Once the just-in-time paperwork has all been uploaded into the just-in-time space in ERA Commons, and the links are included in the post about this, you as the RA and the PI are not able to submit this. The just-in-time must be submitted by a signature official. If you happen to be the signature official, then yes, absolutely, you can submit it. But otherwise, it's going to need to go through whoever your signature official is. They're going to sign off on it or come back to you with questions or what have you. And then they are going to be the ones to submit it to the grants management specialists and to the NIH. What I would recommend is download the snap sheet for the just-in-time, which has an overview of this is what a just-in-time is. And it also has a list of questions that you can ask your manager or ask your supervisor to find out where you would go to gather the information to put together a just-in-time. These are also really good questions to ask, because when a manager gets these questions, they're like, oh, these are really good questions. So definitely check those questions. And before doing anything, always make sure that you are checking your institutional and organizational policies to make sure that you're taking what this general framework is that I've offered and applying it to your specific organization's rules. This has been another Research Administration Snap with Manessa Konecki. Do not forget to head over to Patreon and subscribe for free at manessa.inc so that you can be notified anytime I upload another snap that'll help you with your research administrative career.